Wonderful. So that got your blood pumping again. We've got an incredible presentation to wrap up our day, exploring how to grow and scale your sales program with a true leader in the field. Dr. Lenita Davis is the director of the Center for Sales and Sales Management at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and president of the University Sales Center Alliance. A recognized leader in sales education, she's the author of Sales Management, Shaping Future Sales Leaders, textbook, and has led transformative sales programs at multiple universities. Dr. Davis has secured major funding for experiential learning labs, developed industry partnerships, and co-created a widely adopted role-play feedback system used in over 30 institutions. With over 3,000 academic citations, she also serves on the executive board of the USCA and has driven national research initiatives. Before academia, she spent over a decade in management roles at Procter & Gamble and James River Corporation. She holds a PhD from the University of Cincinnati, an MBA from Xavier University, and a BS in mechanical engineering from Tuskegee University. Help me welcome Lenita Davis, Dr. Lenita Davis.
So you'll notice, while they get this set up, you'll notice I have a person reaching down and they're reaching for a gift. And this was deliberate because what I teach my students is that, and if you look at the old English meaning from sales, is that sales is a gift. Sales is about the art of giving. I listened to some of you talk about, oh, my students are scared to sell, they get butterflies in their stomach. And I kind of reframed the idea of selling with my students, and I said, what if you had $500,000 and you were giving it away to someone? Would you be nervous about giving away $500,000? Or would you be excited? Would you cry or be upset if someone turned down your gift of $500,000? I'm like, no. Well, that's what sales is. Usually you're providing something of value, sometimes way more than $500,000, right? And so you're providing something of value that's going to save the money, make the money, or something like that. And so you should be excited when you come into the classroom. When you go to a sales pitch. So I talk about sales as being a gift. I design programs to give students that not just knowledge, but also experiences. And my corporation, you also give to corporations. You give the gift of superstar salespeople that are going to help keep their company vibrant, profitable. You're giving them sales reps that have a lower retention rate than students who have not been through a sales program. You're giving them employees that they have to spend less money training because they've been through a sales program. There's a lot of gifts you're giving corporations. So my intent today is for you to look at, when you develop your sales programs, as developing gift-giving strategies. I want to transform your perspective to think about how you're creating value for your stakeholders. And I mean students, your universities, as well as your corporate partners, because they all work together, right? If your university is not aligned, then it's going to be difficult for your recruiters. Their buying process, so to speak, is going to be difficult. If you don't have students in your program, you're not able to provide value to industry. And then, of course, you have your industry as partners. So how do you provide value and give gifts? And then I'm also going to give you practical tools. So beyond just theory and nice ideas, I'm going to give you practical tools by telling you stories in 2 different scenarios of where I built sales programs. But before I begin, I'd like to tell you a story. How many people love Christmas? How many people like to receive gifts? Right? I love Christmas. I started singing Christmas carols in November, right? And so when I just thought about this presentation, I thought about the 4 types of Christmas gifts you get, right? So one Christmas, I always tell the story, it's a little embarrassing, but there was a pair of boots that I really wanted. I gave my parents pictures, I researched the costs. I was sure I was getting these boots for Christmas. I get under the tree, my mother opens a Christmas gift, And it was a pair of boots, the kind of pair of boots I wanted. And I was so sure, I told my mother, "You opened the wrong present. That's my gift." She says, "No, my name is on it. This is not your gift." But I was so sure I was getting those boots. I got underwear. I did not get those boots. It was the worst Christmas ever, right? So I was anticipated but never received. We've all gotten that Christmas gift where we pretend like we like it, but we really hate it. Does anybody have that fake smile they put on when they open it? "Oh, thanks. That's what I really wanted. Thank you so much." So we always remember that. The surprise gift, one Christmas, my dad gave me a stereo. I didn't ask for it. I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?" But he set it up. I got a pair of headphones. I love that stereo. I didn't even know I wanted that stereo. I was 12 when I got that stereo. I still have it today. It's in mint condition. I don't use it, but I cherish that gift, okay? And then there is the present. I know some people can relate to this. My husband is not good at giving gifts. Can anyone relate to that? Anyone have a spouse? You can put your hand down low. Okay, my husband's horrible. So I would take a catalog. This will tell you my age. Catalog. Circle what I wanted. Circle the size. Circle the cost. And hand it to him. Loved it. I got what I wanted, the size I wanted, everything. So that's the fourth type of Christmas gift. Now you might be asking, how does this relate to sales programs? Well, I'm going to talk to you about that in just a minute. So one thing, in a principle of gift giving is knowing who your audience is, knowing who your recipient is, right? And there's two recipients you need to notice or take stock of. One is your students, of course, and the other is your customer, right? Your industry partner. So you need to ask yourself some key questions. From your students, what is their background? I've taught all different kinds of students. I've had non-traditional students. I've had traditional students. I've had students who stayed on campus. I've had commuter students, right? Why I bring this up? A lot of my ideas, they'll work in the context that I instituted them, but I've learned you can't take the same ideas and apply them unilaterally. You have to take into consideration your audience, your students, and your universities, okay? And so ask yourself some questions about your students. What are their values? What are their aspirations? These are the things you need to take into account as you design your system, right? When I had non-traditional students, most of them were from lower income backgrounds, and I started talking about making $60,000, $70,000 a year. Their jaws just dropped. They couldn't believe you could make that kind of money. They didn't understand. It was like me talking about Mars and saying Mars is great. They were like, "You can make $60,000? And I was like, "Yeah, I wouldn't get out of bed for less than 50. What are you people talking about?" And they're, "Well, how would I spend that money?" I mean, it was that much of a disconnect for them. They thought they'd be making $24,000 to $30,000. That's when I first learned, and I'm talking about maybe 5 years ago, right? So I'm talking about understand your culture, understand where your students are coming from. And then your corporate partners, right? What kind of operational constraints are they under, right? I work with some corporate partners. If you have a request for under $5,000, the recruiter can sign it and write a check that same day. Anything over $5,000, they got to go to VPs, presidents, whatever. So, I work with them, and sometimes I bust up the invoice, so none of the charges are over $5,000, as long as they don't perceive that as unethical. But I work through what are their operation constraints. Like I know in US, recruiting budgets are completed by July 1. So any kind of partnerships that I want to institute or request, this is my month to do it, right? I've got a prospect cold call during the month of June. July 1 is over. Right, so understanding that. One of the first questions I ask any of my partners is, what are your goals around recruiting? How many students do you want to hire? Do you want them regional, or do you want someone who's willing to relocate? What kind of students are you looking for? These are the kinds of things I try to understand first and uncover from my industry partners. Okay? All right. when I design curriculum, they usually are based on these 3 main courses. You may have more. Did you ever have professional sales class or intro to sales? No? Okay. A few of you, right? So that's the course where we learn what is a sales process, spin, all those kinds of things. We also have advanced sales. That's where I do, at least in my class, a lot of experiential learning, meaning I give them quotas. They have to cold call, they have to prospect. The quota is a key part of their grade. They don't make quota, they're probably not going to pass the class. They have to enter into a CRM system, right? So when they leave that class, they have real-world sales experience. The other thing that's great about that class is some students figure out that sales is not for them, and it's better they figure it out then than once they get on the job. I've had students, I just can't pick up a phone. Honey, you might think about changing your major, right? So I've had that a lot. The last class is sales management. There's a lot of debate, should students do sales management, because they're not going to be in management for a while. The approach I take is try to understand the organization that you're going into, the type of sales jobs that will be presented to you, and try to put you in the mindset of the manager that you're going to be working for. So when a decision is made, what is the thought behind that? What is going through the manager's head? How do managers evaluate you when you're interviewing? What are managers thinking about when they set your quota, right? So they can manage themselves accordingly. So those are the 3 core courses that we have. And I also have them learn about a CRM system and how to strategically use a CRM system, right? Looking at this, how would you be coached? Looking at this, who do you need to target, or what do they need to do? And I also use a lot of simulations, which students love. They use simulations, they actually make decisions, and it's funny, some of the stuff they come up with, like, all my salespeople quit. I say, really, what'd you do? I don't know, I just lowered their pay and eliminated their commission. I was like, what well, we're not making a profit. I was like, so you think people are gonna stay around when you cut their pay? Like, did you think this through? So they really get a kind of a holistic view of the sales process and managing sales. All right, I talked a little bit about when you're developing your curriculum being responsive to your culture, but also building that bridge with employers. I spend a lot of time with employers. What are the skills that you think our students need? I also look at research and industry trends to see what skills will students need in the future, and how do I make my students stand out above the pack, right? That's a key part of my curriculum. It's great to be here, but I want to be above average. I want my students to go to the top of the pile on the job applications, all right? And then all my skill development is structured, it's layered, right? So we start with the sales process, we start with rapport. I even start with how you walk into the room. I spend a lot of time, they'll walk into the room, I'm known for this. I'll walk into the room, that's not right, go back out. Okay, you don't slam the door when you come in. You don't do this. Because I tell them that first second or 2 is where people make their assessment if they want to do business with you or not. You got maybe a second, maybe 2, if you're lucky, right? So how you enter the room, how you present yourself is really key to you building a relationship. All right, so we do structured skill development, and of course I talked about real-world applications. By the time your students leave your program, they should have done some prospecting. Maybe picked up the phone, called some people. Get that excitement. There's nothing like seeing a student when they've actually closed a deal. It is the most amazing thing. The light goes on, they get so excited. And giving that student that kind of opportunity is amazing, right? They go, oh my God, Dr. Davis, I closed a deal. This sales thing is for real. There is nothing like it. It's why I got into sales education, to see that excitement. There's nothing like it. So giving your students that experience, giving yourselves that gift is an unexpected gift. It's amazing. All right, so let me get down to the brass tacks. The very first sales program I ran, I got into by accident. My department chair approached me right before the tenure vote, right? The tenure vote to decide if they're going to keep me on or kick me out, and said, don't you want to start a sales program? Of course. course I do. Yeah, because I want to keep my job, right? So at the time, University of Alabama had one sales course. And when I took over the sales course, the person before me, they used to just watch videos and fill out a workbook. That was the extent of the sales course. So I had to revamp the entire curriculum. So they had no idea about sales, about careers, about opportunity. Now, how many are familiar with University of Alabama? Their football team? Has that spread up here, Canada? Yeah, okay. Well, this time, they used to be good, but they just got the death penalty, right? But if you know anything about Alabama, it's all about tradition. Traditional students, residential, they're all about tradition. They love football. I've never seen anything like it, right? And at this time, many of them were first generation, so they didn't know a lot about B2B sales. Now, my corporate partners, which I didn't have yet, but many of them, I worked with the Career Center, identified some companies. They wanted access to the students, and they wanted students who were interested or knew about B2B sales, the typical stuff, and wanted to stay in the Southeast. They were hiring for the Southeast. Okay. So how did I develop the curriculum? Well, first, giving a gift that they wanted is I added a two-tier certification system, right? So if you just want to do basic sales, you could. But if you wanted to be extra and have higher status, you would go for the strategic B2B sales certification. That included taking marketing research at the time. I also started something called the Sales Ambassadors. It was the first school to start Sales Ambassadors. And this program gave status to the students because these were ambassadors. And for them, status might have been just having a name tag, being able to wear a name tag. But they were the face of the program. And so what would happen is, and I still do this program today, let's say a corporate visitor is coming on campus. I ran into a corporate recruiter who actually had a boot on his car. He was angry and was threatening to sever his relationship with the Career Center. So I talked to him. He was like, parking's such a drag, blah, 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 blah. So when I started Sales Ambassadors, so here's how it starts. Let's say Fastenal's coming on campus. My student sends them an email outlining what their itinerary will be for today. They meet them out, they take a little red cone, they meet them out, they reserve a spot for the recruiter, they meet them out at the parking lot, make sure they got their parking, and escort them to the building, right? And they always have a student with them the entire day, so the recruiter doesn't have to worry about setting up, doesn't have to worry about finding a room, none of that. And the student, and of course they get exposure to different students all day long, right? Which is a plus. Recruiters, you like that? Students all day long. And then we'd have a lunch where students get a free lunch and the recruiters could informally meet the students at lunch. Now I've expanded some of that at Eau Claire, which I'll talk about later. But these student ambassadors, oh my God, they love the status so much, they would set up, clean up. They were like my right arm because they loved being ambassadors. The other thing they got to do was they got to choose who replaced them. So students had to turn in resumes and interview with the ambassadors if they wanted to be chosen to be a part of the ambassador group. So it's really status. It worked really well there. I enhanced the professional sales course. I put in things like students weren't great at thinking on their feet, so I instituted a thing where we had impromptu every class period. I have names in a hat. I'd pull your name out. I'll say, all right, you're going to give me 1 minute on why the cost of eggs are so high. I mean, I'd pick any random topic, and they have to speak 1 minute on it. A lot of students hated it. I got a lot of negative feedback. But then after a year or two, so you have to wait for these things to settle in because people hate change. But after a year or two, a student came back to me and said, Dr. Davis, you know what? I went on my job, and the first thing they asked everybody to do was give a 1 minute talk about themselves. Everybody else was scared, but golly, I'd done so many in your class, it was like nothing. And the word got around, and students started to appreciate the 1-minute impromptu, okay? I did career exposure. I have mandatory attendance. Because this is something new, a lot of students don't want to go to the events, right? I'd rather go hang out on the yard. I'd rather go to a party. I don't know what she's talking about. I made attendance mandatory and a part of their grade. They would grumble, but once they got there, the opportunities they were presented with, the jobs, many of them got jobs, it kind of turned their attitude around. I've also had them shadow sales reps. And I don't think I ever had a semester where a student shadowed a sales rep and they didn't get a job offer, okay? So these are kinds of things. Then I reinstituted the sales management course and made it more applied. First, I didn't have one, so then I developed one, and I included applied experiences. So one of my more successful ones, I had some that failed, we won't talk about those, was the cardboard regatta. How many of you have heard of a cardboard regatta? Okay, so here's what it is. You've heard of it? Okay, so I gave out 3 prizes. What happens is you build, I got a stack of cardboard. They have to build a cardboard boat that will hold a person 150 pounds. And at this point, I just made them paddle across the pool at the university, right? I had 3 prizes, one for the prettiest boat, one for the boat that was the fastest, and then one for, what was the other one? Prettiest, fastest, ugliest boat, right? But they had to pick one of the 3 categories that they were going for before they started. And they had to work as a team and build a strategy. It's how we applied the principles of sales leadership. But what was fun was at the final, we'd all go to the pool and put the boats in the water to see what happens. And that was called the cardboard regatta, okay? So you can have fun with it too. And then I had advanced sales. I did advanced sales at Alabama. Now, I kept theirs pretty simple. I told them, look, we're gonna have an end of the year banquet. They're like, really, what's it gonna be? I'm like, I don't know. Well, what are you gonna have? And I was like, I don't know. They're like, why not? I said, because we have 0 budget. So however lavish the banquet is depends on how many corporate partnerships you sell. They're like, what do you mean? So they had to sell a recruiter a table, and then they had to have the table filled with students, right? At the time, I think a table was $100, right? Here are the students. No one's gonna spend $100 to eat dinner with us. It's like, what are you, crazy? They waste on, no one's gonna spend $100, Dr. Davis. I said, they'll do it. I said, and however much, if you raise $50, we're all gonna be sitting there with your family and friends eating potato chips. If you raise more than that, we'll have steak, we'll have whatever. The part of that was when they closed, so what I did, because they were so unfamiliar, is in my off time, I pre-closed about 15 of my partners, right? 15 people, I pre-closed them, right? And I shuffled them in the prospects. I gave everybody like 2 or 3 prospects, and I shuffled them in the prospect. And I said, look, they're gonna be nervous. Give them a few questions, give them a few objections, but at the end, say yes. They're like, okay, gotcha. And it was crazy. They were nervous, they were this and that and there, and then they go, okay, yeah, I'll take some. And some of them still kept selling, but they're like, okay, I'll take some. I'm like, oh my God, Dr. Davis, I closed. And that energy then kept them, then they got their own prospects, they got their own calls, and then they started to close on that. One student actually got New Orleans, the NBA team from New Orleans to buy a table, right? They just went that far into it. So that little bit of ignition really got them going. All right, and so then, and this is what I mean by context. Then I went to University, there was another stop, but my latest stop was University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, which already had an established sales program, but, you know, to be honest, they rested on their laurels a little too much, and things had gotten, you know, they weren't number 1. We are now, but they weren't then. Okay. They were very championship driven. They had a trophy case, all of that. They're like, we won, They love to win sales competitions. They're very leadership focused. They had a lot of student organizations, that kind of thing. And they're deeply committed to doing community service projects. They love giving back to the community. They like to win, and they like to give back to the community. Now, and then, of course, our partners, at the time, they had lost so many partners, they were down to 4 partners. And when I talked to some of them that left, the issue was they'd show up, and maybe 4 or 5 students would be there. They're like, I'm not paying all this money to see 4 or 5 people, right? And they wanted the students to have more updated skills. So I was like, okay, gotcha. So first of all, this was a little tougher. So Alabama, they didn't know much, and it was a new experience, right? Eau Claire was still thinking they were winners. So I had the great job of telling them, y'all aren't as good as you think you are, right? So you know that message went over really well, right? So there was a little hate, but you know, I took it, right? I had to introduce new material, which they hated, but I took it. I was telling someone the story that, was it you, Juan, I told the story to? Sales management class. And they weren't doing role plays anymore in class, right? So I made the sales management class do a role play, and they protested. Now, I prepared my department chair, but there was a line out her door of students protesting. I can't believe this woman's making us do role plays. She's like, what's your major? Sales. She's like, get out of my office, right? And so it was a real big cultural change I had to take them through. Because there was the haves and have-nots. So the really bright students were getting the role plays and going to the competitions, and everybody else was just going to class, not doing role plays or anything. So what do you do in this situation? Well, here's what we did. Mandatory attendance at corporate events. You don't go, your grade's going to be dramatically hurt. The same with our sales competition. We have a sales competition, internal sales competition, and it's worth like, I think 30 or 40% of your grade in professional sales, right? And everybody is required to do the blue gold sales competition and get that experience, and it's internal competition. We made role plays. We had role plays as a key part of our sales and advanced sales class, and we had corporate partners get involved with that, right? That increased the value to partners. So one of the things we instituted is a thing I call corporate days, right? I have a sales ambassadors, like I told you before, and we called it corporate days. And I said, when you come to our corporate day, you are the only corporation that is there. Because one of the things I heard from the industry is, I'm an unknown company, I'm up there competing with Hormel and some sector companies. Students don't pay us any attention. So we came up with corporate days. So when you come, Fastenal comes on corporate day, they're the only corporation there. And their day goes from 8 till about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And at the end, we do a podcast with them. So there's a lunch, they go to all the classrooms. And my pitch is, in one day, you'll see over 100 students. One trip, one day, you'll see over 100 students. It overcomes a lot of objections about it's difficult to get to your school, I don't see enough students. It's one day, all day, you see nothing but students, right? And the students are the face of the program. So having access to the corporate partners, having them in your phone, having their email, was kind of like a status thing for the sales ambassadors, right? And I always use the younger students to be sales ambassadors because it was a low-risk way for them to get in front of the partners, right? All they had to do was say, good morning, and welcome to the classroom, right? Can I take you to your next classroom? I mean, that's all they had to say. So it was a great thing for freshmen and sophomores to get involved in and start to get their toes wet, right? So that was that. The next thing we did was we had to revamp the sales management class to get more of the critical thinking skills, to get them involved in CRM, those kinds of things. We did a sales management simulation. We do structured interviews with AI. We have an AI program that we use, and you upload a job description, You upload your resume, and the AI bot interviews you, right? And then scores you and gives you detailed feedback, similar to what you saw earlier. We did something called a bragathon, because people in the Midwest in the US pride themselves on being humble, right? And it's always funny. I talked to a student the other day, and they're like, I don't have any accomplishments. I don't know what to put down on my bio. And I'm like, okay, well, let me talk to you a minute. I said, are you paying for your education? They're like, what do you mean? I said, well, are you paying? Well, I have loans. I said, I got that, but are you responsible for the loans? Well, yeah. I said, are you working to pay some of your bills? I'm like, yeah. Are you getting money from mommy or daddy? No. I said, okay, that's called paying for your education, right? And what's your GPA? I don't know, 4.0. Okay, so let me get this right. You're paying your way through school, you're working 30 hours a week, and you have a 4.0. Is that correct? Yeah, that's right. So, and you're saying what, I have no accomplishments? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Okay, well, when you put it like that, I'm like, put it like what? Is that not the truth? She's like, well, yeah. So I have to spend a lot of time pulling out what their accomplishments are. So what we did was we had a competition called the Bragathon, and students had to brag on themselves for 1 minute, and the best student won a prize, right? And our corporate partners judged it, right? So that was great. Then our advanced sales class, remember the gift that they want, right? That they said they wanted. Well, this is the gift they didn't know they wanted, but they ended up liking. And it's called, what we do is we in our class, in advanced sales, they used to have a quota, but if you didn't make quota, you could write a paper and they would give you credit, right? So I came in and I said, you have a quota, and if you don't make it, you're gonna lose points off your grade. Here's a quota for A, here's a quota for B, here's a quota for C, and below that you fail. It's 30, 40% of your grade, period. They're like, what if I don't make quota? I got that so many times. What if I don't make quota? What if I don't sell anything? Do you need this class to graduate? I'm like, yeah. I said, I guess you better make quota. So it was do or die, and that's really the only way to get the students out there. If there's an escape clause, an escape route, they will take it. So we had a quota. Everything went to a nonprofit. So we do the tour of the nonprofit, and they see where their money is going, who it's helping. And so we do that. They have to enter in touches into a CRM system. They're not given any leads, right? Because they're experienced. They already know about B2B. So they're given no leads. It's like my version of Glengarry Glen Ross. You want a lead, you got to earn it, right? And so when you sell $100 worth, I'll give you a lead, right? And so that's what's happened. So this year we instituted AI, where similar to what you saw today, where they had to practice getting past the gatekeeper or cold calling. Ours was meaner. She hung up several times, but they had to pass it to go out and sell. So here's what happened. The first year, the students raised, I think, $30,000, $40,000. The next year, they raised $58,000. And this past year, with AI and some other stuff, they raised $80,000. Imagine how proud they were. We were on TV. There's a picture of me holding a check up, presenting it to them for $80,000. It's something they'll never forget for the rest of their lives. We put a plaque up of who sold the most. I started an executives club, so students that sold $5,000 or more, I took them out to dinner, at a steak dinner, and they're part of the executive circle, right? Their feedback to me was, Dr. Davis, you need to raise the quota, and you need to raise how much we have to do to get a warm lead. So it went from crying and whining to challenge us even more, which was very exciting to me. So next year we're going for $100,000, right? So that's what happened with them. And then we've also now created a sales major, again, building on that status, that kind of thing. Now, when you look at, and we added a key account management course, we're requiring a sales internship. The feedback I got, at least from the university, was, you're requiring a sales internship? What if they don't get one? I said, well, they don't need to be in sales. They were like, well, what if they don't get one? I said, they'll get one, right? We have corporate recruiters there every week. Every week we have a different corporate recruiter. So they trusted me, and we now have a new sales major. It'll be approved, I think, this June. But you see the differences between a program where they didn't know much about sales, a program where they were resting on their laurels. You have to come up with different kind of programming and to get the students engaged and to move on. So, keeping going. I think I've talked about all these. I will say the only thing I didn't talk about was, as a part of our extracurricular activity, we have a sales team. Everybody, it used to be only the best and the brightest could compete. Now we have everybody competing. Every month we have a different sales competition, and it's sponsored by our corporate partners. Another added value, right? Every month it's sponsored by a corporate partner, and the students compete. We make it like a Harry Potter. Many of you familiar with Harry Potter? Okay, so students develop a house. They could, every time they do something, they earn points. And the team that earns the most points, I take them out to a 4-star restaurant, right? And they get bragging rights, right? And so we have leaderboards for each one of the teams, et cetera. And what it's really done is it's drawn in a lot of the freshmen and sophomores who aren't able to get into a sales class. They join the sales team, and they learn about sales from those competitions. The older kids teach the younger kids, that kind of thing. And it starts building a pipeline of students coming into our program. It increases the exposures that our corporate partners have to our students, and they become an integral part of the curriculum. So we have semester recognition events. Recognition is a big deal for our students at Eau Claire. So we gave them graduation cords, right? If you graduate in the sales program, you get a little cord you wear around your neck when you go across the stage. It's a big deal in the U.S. You got the little cords. They're like, I'm in the sales program. We gave them little bells to ring when they go out. We do a end-of-year banquet for them, and we give out professional certificates for our students. So these are just a few. Hope you got some good ideas. Here's the things. Avoid giving unwanted gifts, right? One is developing strategical organizational alliances, like what you're doing here today, right? Getting with other sales, education programs, find out what they're doing and what to avoid. We've all talked about our successes, but we never talk about our failures. I can tell you a few things not to do, right, in private. But go to these organizations and find out what not to do, what corporations actually hate, what your students don't benefit from, right? And so I gave you a few that I'm involved in. Also, we always do a feedback session. I have board meetings with all my industry partners, and I ask for feedback. And then, once a year, we meet with each of our partners individually, and we ask for feedback. What went well? What didn't go well? How many people did you hire? Because industry partners keep score. They know how many people they hired from your school, right? And if they didn't hire a lot, you need to have an honest conversation. Well, how can I help you get more of my students? How can I help you? What do we need to do? And sometimes I tell them straight up, you haven't been on campus enough. You need to come on campus more. Or when you talk and recruit our students, I heard you say these things, and this was the feedback from the students. So it's a real open dialogue, but you've got to have that feedback look, because partners will disappear on you, and you're like, what happened, right? If you don't have those conversations. It'll be like the gift they didn't want. They'll smile and pretend they liked it, but inside, they're like, not coming back for this, right? So that's what I always do. I always cultivate the relationships, always looking for ways to add more value. We just put in digital screens is what we're in. We're opening it up for sponsorship, where like the sponsors who don't like to travel or can't travel to our campus that often, they can own that digital screen and put up their brand. They can do digital competitions where students scan a QR code and submit resumes or do what have you not. They're in control of the content of this digital screen, and it's in an area where all the sales students and most of our sales students go by, right? We're always looking for ways to add value. With our AI software, we are offering where our partners can upload a job description and have an interviewing competition. And students upload their resume, they interview. Since the AI scores it, our partners pick like the top 10, look them over, and pick the winners. We had a national B2B case competition that we did with FastLaw, where we had over, 400 students that were involved in this case competition, not just from our school, but from Florida State, and I think another school with MBA students up in Boston. So part of my job, yes, I want you to recruit primarily at my school, but I want to be a resource for you to recruit other places, right? Because I can't supply all of your candidates, right? But I will help you make those connections and expand your exposure to other students because we're partners, and I want to help you. I want to give, right? We're always updating our technology, right? Looking for ways, because that adds values, right? That's how you avoid giving gifts nobody wants. Being open to developing not just focus on one technology, but several technologies. And how we decide if we're going to use a technology is one, will it help us develop skills and provide better feedback to our students? That's part of why we used AI. I mean, if you're honest, we have like 90 students, 3 sections of personal selling. I mean, come on, by the 50th role play, aren't you kind of dead? Aren't you kind of phoning it in if you're a buyer or if you're grading it? Like, I'm good for 25, but I'm going to give you all credit. Maybe you're good for 50, right? There's only so many role plays you can do, right? But with the AI bot, one, our students aren't as fearful when they practice with the AI bot than they are with a peer or their professor, right? Because they're always worried about what people think of them, right? The bot doesn't think anything about them, so they're more comfortable. 2, so it helps them prepare so they can go as many times as they want with the bot. The bot never gets tired and always comes with a fresh response. And then they're more confident when they have to do a role play with a human being. So that's why we decided to go with that. CRM, because it helps prepare them. So when we look at a technology, one, is it helping our students be better? Is it providing them better feedback? Is it something that's going to make them stand out when they're in front of our industry partners? That's how we evaluate it, okay? All right. And I think that's it. How'd they do on time? Did I go over? All right. Any questions? I put a ton, right? All right. Yes, question, yes. Yeah.
I guess I gotta, yeah, okay, perfect. The last piece, I just wanted to get a better understanding of it. You said that the bot helps with the role play and the students are less intimidated because the bot has no judgment by virtue of being a bot. Mm-hmm. But I'm just curious about what's lost in that process, because isn't part of it to make the students uncomfortable and put them through that stress, botless?
Well, I look at it as a structured process, right? So if I'm very new to sales, you think students on their own would figure out what they're trying to say or what they're going to say, but usually they wait till they get in front of you to try to figure out what they're going to say. So I put them in front of the bot to work through what they're going to say, like, good morning, blah, blah, blah. And they do it with the bot, and the bot never gets tired, right? And they'll, okay, that didn't work out well. They end it. And then, okay, let me try this. Okay, that worked. Okay. And so then by the time they get to me, they're still uncomfortable, but they have an idea of what they're going to say. And so that's why we like the bot. Because I've had people break down and cry because they didn't practically prepare before they got to me. And so the bot, I've seen less tears.
Yeah, that's great. That helps. It's really good to exercise that front end element. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Davis, I'm Willis with SMEI. I just wanted to say a huge thanks to you for your work as not just as a professor but as an author.
Thanks.
Your sales management, shaping future sales leaders contribution is outstanding. I'm lobbying Wessex to get AI incorporated into the next edition.
I'm way ahead of you.
Oh, thank you so much.
This fall, we are coming out with an AI edition of the role plays in that book for the 3rd edition. We're working on the 4th edition, and we'll have AI with that. And so we're selling it like you would a simulation. They pay a price, they get access to all the simulations. So, because I know the cost is prohibitive of getting AI software. Is that what you were
That's awesome.
lobbying for?
Yeah, thank you, because Dr. Capon hasn't been forthcoming with telling me about that yet. So thank you so much for your contributions. How do you see the affordability of textbooks in the future? Because you just mentioned that accessibility and affordability of textbooks, that is a major barrier that we see in educating future sales leaders.
Yes. They are feeling the pinch, right? And we are working with Wessex now about pricing for their ebook. I think that's going to be more the way people go. I always had an idea of doing a living textbook, but that's a whole nother story. But I think textbooks are going to go to more of the ebook, become more digital. I don't know if that will always fully go away, because the feedback I get from my students is they like something tangible in their hands. They like to flip through. So, but yeah, the way my school does it is the books are included in the tuition, right? So students just go to the bookstore and get a book. The only limiter on that, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think that's the way people are going to go. But I really have to justify if I change a textbook, which to me isn't really a problem. I don't change books that often, right? But I think a lot more schools, because universities are under pressure, are going to include the cost of textbooks in the tuition, and then students just go pick it up. And we're also limited on lab fees, so that's why we're going to try to make the AI simulation very affordable. Like, I'm limited to $50. So that's what I'm really trying to push for buying our simulation, the AI simulation part.
Hi, can you talk a little bit about how you run your competitive sales team? How often do they practice? How you select people who go competitions? How you sort of operate that, please?
Yeah, so sales team, the team itself meets once a month. But what happens is we appoint sales captains, right? And the captains lead practices, right, to get ready for the monthly competition. And they're very incentivized because they want to win the prizes and stuff. I'm thinking of suggesting some changes, like you can fire some members and some to, help them out. But that's pretty much how we do it. Now, from that, there's a couple of things we look at. We look at how well students place in those monthly competitions. We also look at how they place in the internal competitions to decide if we take them nationally. If you don't compete in those competitions, you don't get selected. You're not going to Florida. You're not going to wherever. You're not going to be in the national competition. So we look at their performance monthly and then how they perform in our internal sales competitions.
Dr. Davis.
Yes.
What a treat.
What?
We're out of time, but
Oh,
that
we're
was
out of
a
time.
treat.
Okay, I
Thank
gotta
you
go.
so much.
Bye.
I'm coming up. Hold tight. Hold tight. Stay up
there's
here
more.
for a second.
Okay.
I just want to thank you formally for closing off our day one. This is such a jam-packed event. So many notes. Love how we started with the mentality of gift giving, and it went to the quotas with students. It was just a taboo, right? So I love to corner you over at the top room.
Okay.
We'll to go over how we get quotas for students, and so many questions, so much there. Love the bridging the gaps to the market, which we're all trying to do here. And I think this is big part of our event gathering here. So we're really happy to have you with us.
Thank you.
What a treat. Thank you, Juan, for coming down as well from Wisconsin to be here with us as well from Fastenal. So with that, so thank you again.
Thank
so
you.
another clap, and you're free to
go
exit.
now?
Yeah,
Okay,
don't
thank
go too
you.
far though. Don't watch your step. It is now time to unwind and connect. We're gonna go. Not yet. We're gonna eventually go over there to escape the prom. There's a prom coming in, I think, high school prom. Well-earned cocktail. Great conversation, sponsored by Fastenal. So a big thank you to Fastenal. We do have an opportunity to say a few words over in the tap room as well. We have still some business to take care of with the prizes for the hackathon. And with that, I'll give it over to Rose.
Thank you. Just a few things as we close the day. So first of all, I want to thank our student volunteers today, Sam, Vijesh, and Druvin. They are from the Conestoga Sales Lab, so they are in the middle of their cohort. So if you get a chance to speak with them, or if you're hiring, please do have an opportunity. They're going to stick around later for the networking as well, but they've been a great support to us, and thank you to our tech team from Conestoga as well, helping us with the AV and the videography and the photography team. So everyone will be here tomorrow as well, but we've captured a lot of this today, which is wonderful. We actually have, Bruno and team, can we pull up the QR code, please? So the sessions today, everything that has been videotaped is now available at this QR code, so you can watch that this evening after the cocktail party. We're going to do the same thing tomorrow, but all these sessions are available, and as Patrick said before, we are looking at getting the PowerPoints to you as well. Yes, high school prom in here. So these tables will be broken down and stored and reset up for us tomorrow. So our cocktail party, sponsored by Fastenal, is right across the hall in the tap room.